Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. In the previous lecture, we have finished the topic of pulmonary ventilation, which is the first step of external respiration. In today's lecture, we are going to talk about the gas exchange, that is the diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide through respiratory membrane. It is the second step of external respiration. What we are going to learn from this lecture is the principles and mechanisms of gas exchange. We are going to learn in detail the structure of the respiratory membrane, and finally we are going to learn the factors that influence the process of gas exchange across the respiratory membrane. So we will begin with the basic principles of gas exchange. The basis of gas exchange in the lungs is the process of diffusion. From your previous knowledge, you must be knowing that diffusion is a passive process which does not require ATP to be carried out. It's a process which is passive, which does not require energy in form of ATP. Instead, the energy for the process of diffusion comes from the kinetic energy of the moving molecules. For diffusion to occur, there should be a gradient of concentration or a gradient of pressure. So in the lungs, the process of diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide occurs down their partial pressure gradient. So first we are going to see what is the partial pressure and the partial pressure gradient. You all know that air is a mixture of different gases. Nitrogen is present in the air, which is the most abundant in amount. About 78% of air is nitrogen, 21% of air is oxygen, and about 0.04% is carbon dioxide. Other traces are also present, but we will concentrate on oxygen and carbon dioxide. So 21% of the air is oxygen and 0.04% is carbon dioxide, and the rest is nitrogen. Now altogether these gases exert a pressure which is called as atmospheric pressure, and the value of this atmospheric pressure is 760 millimeter of mercury at sea level. Now in a mixture of gas, this total pressure is called, that is 760 millimeter of mercury, is actually it is the sum of the individual pressure exerted by each gas in this mixture. I am repeating this point, that air is a mixture of gases. Three important gases are there: nitrogen, oxygen and carbon dioxide. Together these gases exert total pressure of 760 millimeter of mercury at sea level, and this is known as the atmospheric pressure. Now this 760 millimeter of mercury, it is actually a sum of the individual pressure exerted by each gas in the air. Now each gas in the mixture will exert pressure, and this pressure is called as the partial pressure. So partial pressure is the pressure exerted by a gas in a mixture of gases. Now this partial pressure exerted by a gas in a mixture is directly proportional to its concentration, which means greater the concentration, so greater will be the partial pressure exerted by that gas. Since in the air 78% is nitrogen, so 78% of 760 millimeter of mercury is caused by nitrogen. Oxygen is 21%, so 21% of the total atmospheric pressure is caused by the oxygen, and contribution of carbon dioxide is very small because its concentration is also very small in the air. So individual pressure which is exerted by each gas is the partial pressure, and this partial pressure, it depends upon the concentration of a gas. Greater the concentration, greater will be the partial pressure exerted by the gas. Now what is partial pressure gradient? Gradient means the difference. So partial pressure gradient is the difference of pressure of gas across a surface or between two areas. Means at one place the pressure is high and at the other place the pressure is low. So partial pressure gradient is the difference between the pressure of a gas across a surface or between two points or between two areas. Now gases are dissolved in the body fluids and the body tissues as well. So when we inhale oxygen, it diffuses across the respiratory membrane and it goes into the blood. And then it also diffuses through the interstitial tissue to reach the cells of the body. So gases, when these are dissolved in the body fluids and in the tissues, they also exert pressure. Now pressure exerted in the solution, or we can say in the body fluids, it not only depends upon the concentration of the gas, but it also depends upon the solubility coefficient. About atmospheric pressure, we learned that in atmosphere, in air, the partial pressure of each gas is dependent upon its concentration. But when we talk about the pressure exerted by gases in the body fluids and in the tissues, there is one more factor that will determine the pressure exerted by a particular gas. So in addition to the concentration, the solubility coefficient also determines the pressure exerted by a gas in the body fluids and the tissues. Now this is known as Henry's law. Henry's law is that partial pressure of a gas in a solution in the body fluids depends upon the solubility coefficient in addition to the concentration of the gas. Now what is solubility coefficient? Now solubility coefficient is a constant which itself depends upon the solubility of the gas in the body fluids and its molecular weight. Solubility coefficient is directly proportional to the solubility and it is inversely related to the molecular weight of the gas. Now this slide shows us the solubility coefficients of different gases. So we have the solubility coefficient of oxygen, which is 0.024. We have the solubility coefficient of carbon dioxide, which is 0.57. And we have the solubility coefficient of carbon monoxide, which is 0.018, and of nitrogen, which is 0.012, and helium, which is 0.008. We will concentrate on the solubility coefficients of oxygen and carbon dioxide because these are two important respiratory gases. We can see that solubility coefficient of oxygen is quite less as compared to the solubility coefficient of carbon dioxide. The solubility coefficient of carbon dioxide, it is 20 times greater than the solubility coefficient of oxygen. Now due to this, there are two important features or the characteristics that you must remember. The solubility coefficient of carbon dioxide is 20 times greater than that of oxygen. Due to this, the rate of diffusion of carbon dioxide is 20 times greater than the rate of diffusion of oxygen. So greater the solubility coefficient of a gas, greater will be its rate of diffusion across a surface or in a tissue. Second thing is, if the solubility coefficient is high, is greater, then the pressure exerted by the gas will be less. The pressure exerted by the gas in the tissues will be less. So that's why carbon dioxide, which is more soluble in the tissues, exert a less partial pressure in the body tissues as compared to oxygen, and this we are going to see shortly after a few slides. Now this slide shows you the partial pressure of respiratory gases as they enter and leave the lungs. Again, I will emphasize only on oxygen and carbon dioxide. although you can also see the pressure values of nitrogen, since it is present in greatest amount in the air. So major contribution of the atmospheric pressure is by the nitrogen, and you can also see this from this table, that in the air 597 is caused by the nitrogen, 159 millimeter of mercury in the air is caused by the oxygen, and only 0.3 millimeter of mercury is caused by the carbon dioxide. And if the air is humidified completely, as it occurs when we inhale it and it passes through the airways, it is completely humidified. So the vapor pressure of water is 47 millimeter of mercury, and in the air the average water pressure is 3.7. so this give a total of 760 millimeter of mercury of the atmospheric pressure at the sea level. Now when air is humidified, while passing through the airways, water is added to it. When water is added to the air, the water vapors also exert pressure, and this pressure is total pressure. When it is completely humidified, the total pressure exerted by water is 47 millimeter of mercury. Now since the atmospheric pressure cannot exceed 760 millimeter of mercury, so addition of water will cause a decrease in the pressure exerted by the individual gases in the air. I am repeating this point. When the air is completely humidified with water vapors to a partial pressure of 47 millimeter of mercury of water, the partial pressure which is exerted by the individual gas will reduce. So we can see the partial pressure exerted by nitrogen in the humidified air is decreased. Similarly, the partial pressure of oxygen is also decreased to 149 millimeter of mercury, and this is because of the fact that total pressure cannot be increased beyond 760 millimeter of mercury. Now when this air reaches the alveoli, it will mix up with the alveolar air, and the partial pressure of oxygen, it will reduce to 104 millimeter of mercury, because the pure oxygen, the oxygen in the air is mixed up with the alveolar air. So the partial pressure of oxygen in the alveolar air is 104 millimeter of mercury, because it is constantly exchanged, it is constantly diffusing into the pulmonary capillary blood. And there is an increase in the partial pressure of carbon dioxide from 0.3 to 40 millimeter of mercury, and the reason for this is that carbon dioxide diffuses from the pulmonary capillaries into the alveolar air. So in the alveolar air, the concentration of carbon dioxide is high, and as a result its partial pressure is increased. Now this is the partial pressure values of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the expired air. In the expired air, again the partial pressure of oxygen is increased. It is because of the fact that when alveolar air is mixed up with dead space air, the partial pressure of oxygen is increased, because in the air which is present in the dead space, it does not take part in gas exchange, so it has high concentration of oxygen. So when alveolar air is expired, the dead space is also expired, so expired air will have a pressure of 120 millimeter of mercury, and the partial pressure of carbon dioxide will decrease for the same reason to a value of about 27 millimeter of mercury, because in the dead space there is no gaseous exchange, so carbon dioxide will not diffuse from the body into dead space air. It will have the same atmospheric pressure as 0.3 millimeter of mercury. When it will mix up with the alveolar air, the pressure of carbon dioxide will become 27 millimeter of mercury in the expired air. Now another important point to remember is that alveolar air is slowly renewed by the atmospheric air. Alveolar air is not rapidly and completely changed by the atmospheric air during process of breathing. With each breath, 350 ml of new air is brought into the alveoli. We have already discussed this point in the last lecture, that when you are inhaling a tidal volume of 500 ml, 150 ml will fill the dead space and 350 ml will reach the alveoli. So 350 ml of new air is added to the alveoli with each breath, and the same amount of air is removed from the alveoli during process of expiration. And when you are breathing tidal volume, your lungs are at functional residual capacity, which is 2300 ml. So in 2300 ml, 350 ml is renewed with each breath. So it is a slow replacement, so slow renewal of the alveolar air during process of breathing. Now what is the significance of this slow replacement? Again, this point we have already discussed, that the slow replacement of the alveolar air during process of breathing, it prevents sudden changes in the gas concentration and partial pressures in the blood. This is the same as we did with the significance of residual volume. So if the lungs were going to completely empty each time during expiration, then this will cause a sudden change in the gas concentrations and partial pressures in the blood. So since this does not happen and the lungs are not completely emptied during expiration, instead small amount of air is added to the alveoli and the same amount is removed from the alveoli during the breath. So there is a prevention of sudden change in the gas concentration and the partial pressures of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the blood. Now we will move on to the process of diffusion of gases through the respiratory membrane. For this, first we are going to learn what is a respiratory unit, and then we are going to study the structure of the respiratory membrane. From our previous discussions, we know that gas exchange does not occur in all portions of the respiratory tract. It only occurs in the terminal portions of the lungs. Now the terminal portions of the lungs which are involved in the gas exchange are collectively known as respiratory unit or the respiratory lobule. Now each respiratory unit or a respiratory lobule is composed of a respiratory bronchiole, alveolar duct, atria and alveoli. There are about 300 million alveoli in the two lungs, each alveolus having a diameter of 0.2 millimeter. Moreover, the alveolar walls are very thin and are surrounded by a network of pulmonary capillaries. Now gas exchange between air and the pulmonary blood occurs through the membranes of the terminal portions of the lung. Again I am repeating that gas exchange between the air and the pulmonary blood, it occurs through the membranes of the terminal portions of the lungs, that is the membranes of the respiratory unit or the respiratory lobule. Now these membranes through which the exchange is going to take place, these are collectively known as respiratory membrane. So respiratory membrane is the membrane of the terminal portions of the lungs through which gas exchange is going to take place. This is a diagram of a respiratory unit. This is the respiratory bronchiole arising from the terminal bronchiole. So terminal bronchiole gave rise to respiratory bronchiole, and from the respiratory bronchiole begins the respiratory unit or the respiratory lobule. These respiratory bronchioles gave rise to the alveolar ducts. From alveolar ducts are connected the atrium, and then we have the alveolar sacs. In this diagram you cannot see the atrium. I will show this in the next diagram. This is it. So terminal bronchiole, from which is arising the respiratory bronchiole, which is a part of the respiratory unit, and from the respiratory bronchiole what arise is the alveolar duct. Then this is the atrium. The singular is atrium and plural are the atria. Here it is labeled atrium, and atrium then gave rise to alveoli or the alveolar sacs. So this is the structure of the respiratory bronchiole. The respiratory lobule. Now we are going to see the structure of the respiratory membrane. Now this diagram is showing us the ultrastructure of the respiratory membrane. This is an alveolus. This is the capillary containing the blood in it. This is a red blood cell. So if we start from the side of the alveolus, 6 layers can be enumerated, or 6 layers can be seen in the respiratory membrane. Again I am repeating, when we start from the side of the alveolus, we can we can enumerate 6 layers of respiratory membrane. The first layer of the respiratory membrane is formed by a thin layer of the fluid lining the alveolus. This is the fluid which contains surfactant, and the function of surfactant is to reduce the surface tension. So first layer in the respiratory membrane is formed by the layer of fluid lining the inner surface of the alveolus. Second layer of respiratory membrane is formed by the alveolar epithelium. There is a single layer of epithelial cells in the alveolar epithelium. This forms the second layer of the respiratory membrane. The third layer is formed by the basement membrane of the alveolar epithelium. This is the basement membrane of alveolar epithelium. Then there is a thin layer of the connective tissue which is called as interstitial tissue or the interstitial space. Then the next layer is formed by the basement membrane of the capillary endothelium. Basement membrane of the capillary endothelium, and on the basement membrane of the capillary endothelium are present the capillary endothelial cells. So we have 6 layers. First layer is the layer of alveolar fluid lining the surfactant. Second layer is of alveolar epithelium. Third layer is of the basement membrane of the alveolar epithelium. Fourth layer is of the interstitial tissue. Fifth layer is formed by the basement membrane of the capillary endothelium. The sixth layer is formed by the capillary endothelial cells. Now this is the enlarged view of the structure of the respiratory membrane. This is the side of the alveolus containing air, and this is the capillary containing the blood. So first layer is of the fluid lining the alveolus, and it contains the surfactant. Second is alveolar epithelium. You can very clearly see in this diagram. Then the third layer is the basement membrane. The fourth layer is of interstitial tissue. The fifth layer is the basement membrane of the capillary endothelium, and sixth layer is formed by the capillary endothelial cells. Now we enumerated the 6 layers. Now despite the presence of a large number of layers in the respiratory membrane, the overall thickness of respiratory membrane is very less. It's quite a thin membrane. The average diameter of the respiratory membrane is only 0.6 micrometer. And at certain places it may be as thin as 0.2 micrometer. I am repeating, despite a large number of layers in the respiratory membrane, the average thickness is only 0.6, and at places it might be as thin as 0.2 micrometer. While the total surface area of the respiratory membrane is quite large, it is 70 meters square, which is equal to the floor area of a 25 by 30 foot room. The average diameter of pulmonary capillary is 5 micrometer, while the diameter of a red blood cell is 7.5 micrometer. So, the size of pulmonary capillary, the diameter of the pulmonary capillaries is even smaller than the size of an RBCs. So, due to this, the RBCs have to squeeze through the pulmonary capillaries, and this increases the rapidity of the gas exchange because it reduces the distance for which the oxygen and carbon dioxide have to diffuse. So, this decreases the distance to be traveled by the respiratory gases, and this increases the process of gas exchange, the rapidity of the process of gas exchange. Now, there are different factors which influence the gas exchange process across respiratory membrane. These factors include the thickness of respiratory membrane, the surface area of respiratory membrane, the diffusion coefficient, and the partial pressure gradient. All these factors that influence the gas exchange, we can describe them in form of a formula or in form of an equation, where rate of diffusion is equal to delta P. Delta P is the difference in the pressure, so it is the partial pressure gradient. A stands for the surface area, D is for the distance, and we can take it as the thickness of respiratory membrane, and S is for the solubility, and MW is for the molecular weight. So, solubility and molecular weight together form the diffusion coefficient. So, these are four factors that influence the process of gas exchange. Now, we are going to see these factors one by one. The first factor that we are going to study is thickness of respiratory membrane. We just discussed that the total average thickness of respiratory membrane is only 0.6 micrometer. Now, this ensures the rapidity of gas exchange, but some pathological conditions can cause increase in the thickness of respiratory membrane. So, increased thickness of respiratory membrane decreases the rate of diffusion, and 2 to 3 times increase in the thickness of respiratory membrane will significantly interfere with normal respiratory exchange of gases. Now, pulmonary fibrosis and pulmonary edema are the two conditions in which the thickness of respiratory membrane is increased. You can also see in these diagrams, this is the diagram showing you the pulmonary fibrosis, and this is the diagram showing you pulmonary edema. So, these are two conditions in which the thickness of respiratory membrane is increased, and increased thickness in the thickness of respiratory membrane causes a decrease in the diffusion of gases. So, concentrate on this diagram. This is the normal alveoli, and these are the alveoli in case of pulmonary fibrosis. Because of the fibrosis, you can see the walls of the alveoli are thickened. Due to thickening of the walls of the alveoli, the exchange of respiratory gases, that is oxygen and carbon dioxide, is decreased across the respiratory membrane, and greater the increase in the thickness, lesser will be the rate of diffusion. Now, this is the condition known as pulmonary edema. By pulmonary edema, we means the collection of fluid in the alveoli and in the interstitial tissue of the lungs. So, this is normal. Air is present in the alveoli. The epithelium of the alveoli is quite thin, so there is rapid exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen between the air and the blood in the capillaries. But when there is collection of fluid, build-up of fluid in the air sacs in the alveoli, as well as there is build-up of fluid in the interstitial tissues of the lung, Now this will increase the distance or the thickness through which the oxygen and carbon dioxide have to diffuse, and this will decrease the rate of diffusion across the respiratory membrane. Now the second factor which influences the gas exchange across the respiratory membrane is the surface area. The total surface area of respiratory membrane is 70 meters square, which is quite large. Now increase in the surface area will increase the rate of diffusion, and decrease in the surface area decreases the rate of diffusion. Surface area of the lung or the respiratory membrane can be decreased under pathological conditions, such as when the whole lung or a part of lung is removed surgically, lobectomy is performed, so that there is decrease in the total surface area of the respiratory membrane. The surface area of the respiratory membrane is also decreased in emphysema. In emphysema, there is a decrease in the surface area of the respiratory membrane because there is the alveoli dissolve and they coalesce, the walls of the alveoli dissolve and the adjacent alveoli coalesce, they unite together and they form large air sacs. Although a larger air sac is formed, but because of the dissolution of the walls of the alveoli, there is decrease in the total surface area. Many alveoli are replaced by one large alveolus, so that there will be a decrease in the total surface area of the respiratory membrane. So decrease in the total surface area of the respiratory membrane is going to interfere with the gas exchange process. The gas exchange process is severely affected even at rest if the surface area is decreased to one-third to one-fourth of the normal. And the condition which is associated with increase in the surface area is the exercise. This is a physiological condition. During exercise, there is increase in the surface area of the respiratory membrane, which contributes to a greater exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the air in the alveoli and the blood in the pulmonary capillaries. The increase in the surface area during exercise occur because of hyperventilation. Hyperventilation, that is increased rate and depth of breathing, stretches the alveolar wall to a greater extent, and also there is an increase in the cardiac output which cause the distension of the pulmonary capillaries. Now these two factors, that is the distension of the pulmonary capillaries and stretching of the airways and the alveoli because of hyperventilation, causes an increase in the surface area of respiratory membrane, and this enhances the gas exchange process during exercise. Now this is a diagram showing you the effect of emphysema on the gas exchange process. This is the structure of normal alveoli, and this is the damaged alveoli in case of the emphysema. As I just told you that in emphysema there is dissolution of the individual alveoli. Many alveoli are dissolved, their walls are dissolved, they will coalesce together forming large alveolus, and due to this large alveolus the total surface area is decreased because individual walls of each alveolus is dissolved and they coalesce forming one large alveolus, due to which the total surface area of the respiratory membrane is going to decrease, and this will interfere with the gas exchange process. Now the next factor that we are going to study is diffusion coefficient. Now diffusion coefficient is a proportionality constant, or we can also say it's a constant value for each gas. Now diffusion coefficient is directly proportional to the rate of diffusion. It will be more appropriate if we say that the diffusion rate of diffusion is directly proportional to the diffusion coefficient. Greater the diffusion coefficient, greater will be the rate of diffusion. Now diffusion coefficient itself depends upon the solubility of the gas and its molecular weight. Greater the solubility, greater will be the diffusion coefficient, and greater the molecular weight, lesser will be the diffusion coefficient. Again, I am repeating this point, that rate of diffusion of a gas is directly proportional to the diffusion coefficient. Greater the diffusion coefficient of a gas, greater will be its rate of diffusion. And diffusion coefficient itself is dependent on the solubility of that gas and its molecular weight. So greater the solubility, greater will be the diffusion coefficient. Greater the molecular weight, lesser will be the diffusion coefficient. And we studied in the beginning that diffusion coefficient or the solubility coefficient of carbon dioxide is 20 times greater than that of oxygen, because the solubility of carbon dioxide is more in the body tissues as compared to oxygen. So diffusion coefficient of carbon dioxide is 20 times greater than that of oxygen, and because of this reason the rate of diffusion of carbon dioxide is 20 times greater than the rate of diffusion of oxygen. So this is the effect of diffusion coefficient. By diffusion coefficient of different gases, we compare their rate of diffusion, and for each gas the diffusion constant is a diffusion coefficient is a constant value. Now the last factor, but not the least one, is the partial pressure gradient. Now partial pressure gradient, it determines the direction of diffusion of a gas. We have two important gases, oxygen and carbon dioxide. So we are going to talk about the partial pressure gradients of oxygen and carbon dioxide across the respiratory membrane. This is the respiratory membrane. This is the air in the alveolus. This is the blood in the pulmonary capillary. So we just said that partial pressure gradient will determine the direction of diffusion. A gas will diffuse from an area of high partial pressure to the area of low partial pressure. So partial pressure of oxygen in the alveolar air is 100. Here it is written 100, but in your books it is given 104. So you must refer to the values in the textbook. So partial pressure of oxygen in the alveolar air is 104 millimeter of mercury, while partial pressure of oxygen in the pulmonary capillary blood is only 40 millimeter of mercury, because this is deoxygenated blood. So oxygen will diffuse from the alveolar air into the pulmonary capillaries, while the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the pulmonary capillaries is 45 millimeter of mercury, while in the alveolar air it is 40 millimeter of mercury. So carbon dioxide will diffuse from the pulmonary capillary blood into the alveolar air. So that's how the partial pressure gradient affects the direction of diffusion of a gas. Again, this is a diagram to show you the gradients of the gradient of oxygen and its direction of diffusion. So in alveolus the partial pressure of oxygen is 104, and in the pulmonary capillaries the partial pressure is 40 millimeter of mercury. So oxygen will diffuse from the alveolar air into the blood until the pressure on the two sides of the respiratory membrane is equalized, which is the equilibrium. We know that process of diffusion continues until an equilibrium is achieved, which is an equal pressure or equal concentration on the both sides. So this was about the partial pressure of oxygen and its diffusion. Now this diagram shows you the partial pressure of carbon dioxide and its diffusion. The partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the pulmonary capillaries is 45 millimeter of mercury, while in the alveolus it is 40 millimeter of mercury. So carbon dioxide, it leaves the blood and it moves into the alveolar air, and this process will continue until the pressure of the carbon dioxide on the two sides of the respiratory membrane will become equal, and equilibrium will be established when the partial pressure on both sides will become equal to 40 millimeter of mercury. So that's all for today. and I hope you will understand it. Thank you for your listening.